At my cluttered office desk, between a chipped coffee mug and a stack of overdue forms, my boss, Joseph, said something so honest it stopped the air in my lungs. I thought I knew where that conversation was headed. I was wrong. What he confessed next turned an ordinary Wednesday into the day I began to see my life and my work differently. You won't believe how a single truth, laid gently on a desk, can change two people at once. Before I begin, do me a favor. Tell me in the comments which city you're watching from. Are you in New York, Dallas, Phoenix, or a quiet town I've never even heard of? I love imagining your main street and your morning coffee as you listen. It was the kind of office morning that smells like paper and burnt coffee. I'd tucked my hair behind my ear half a dozen times already, a nervous habit I never quite broke. The fluorescent lights buzzed softly, the printer clicked like it had a cough, and a draft from the hallway nudged a corner of a memo on my desk. I had color-coded tabs in a binder, blue for invoices, yellow for client notes, pink for things I kept putting off, as if the right shade could fix everything. I'm Jessica, 49, with the kind of face that people tell their stories to in elevator rides between the 3rd and the 12th. I work in operations, translation. When there's a mess, I'm the one with a towel and a change of clothes. I know the good pens that don't streak, who in accounting likes a bagel on Thursdays, and which elevator is 5 seconds faster if you catch it before 9. Routine is my comfort. Routine is my courage. Joseph's door was cracked open, the glass catching a ribbon of sunrise as it slid between buildings. He was a steady man. Collared shirt ironed just enough to look like he cared, shoes polished to a reasonable shine, eyes that kept their own notes on what you were saying. You'd call him a good boss if you believed in that sort of simple label. I did, until that day when he chose a harder word, honest. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, standing in my doorway with the folder balanced in his hand like something fragile. His voice was even, but you don't spend years reading between the lines of emails without learning to listen for tremors. "Of course," I said, closing the spreadsheet that was pretending to be urgent. He came in, set the folder on my desk, and for a second we were just two people above a street that hadn't decided yet if it wanted to be noisy. He didn't sit. He touched the back of the chair and then let go, as if he was reminding himself to stay standing. "Jessica," he said, "I need to tell you something, and I'm asking for your permission to be transparent. It might be a little personal." There it was, consent, asked for cleanly, like he was testing the doorknob of a room I could refuse him entry to. I felt the room change then, in that gentle, careful way. I nodded. "Go on," I said. "I'm listening." He opened the folder. A single sheet lay on top, charcoal pencil notes lining the margins. My name was at the top, printed in the formal way our HR system likes names to look. Last name first, a comma like a fence. "I'd wrote this last month," he said, "after a meeting where we were asked to cut 5% of departmental costs. I thought I had to be ruthless to be responsible." He paused. "I listed roles I could live without on paper, not remembering those roles have people attached." He tapped the paper, and I recognized my own job code. 3 letters and 3 numbers that meant nothing until that second. The rest of the room dropped an inch. I swallowed. "I put this on the list," he said quietly. "Your role." It was strange what I noticed. The way the light traveled along the grain of my desk. The way the tiny crack in my mug looked suddenly deeper. The hum of the vent overhead like a slow inhale holding itself back from the exhale. I waited for my heart to argue, but it didn't. It sat down politely and folded its hands. "I changed my mind the next day," he added quickly. "That matters, but it doesn't erase the fact that I thought it for a moment. I'm telling you because you deserve the truth, and because something happened that made me realize I was wrong. What happened? My voice surprised me. It sounded calmer than I felt, like the part of me that manages fire drills had walked into the room. He reached into the folder again and pulled out a stack of cards, handwritten notes with soft corners. Thank you cards. Volunteers at the community clinic we supply? No. Clients. A delivery driver's wife. A junior analyst from marketing. People whose names I recognized the way you recognize the neighbors of your neighbors. This one, he said, handing me a card with a slanted script and a smudge of blue pen at the edge, from Mrs. Eddings. You hand-delivered her replacement laptop last winter when the courier got stuck in snow. You sat with her for an hour and walked her through how to back up the photos of her late husband. You never told me that. I remembered the day, my coat wet to the elbows, her living room smelling like cinnamon and furniture polish, the photo frames watching us from the mantel. She'd made me tea in a pot that looked older than the two of us added together. I hadn't told anyone because it didn't feel like a big thing. It felt like the kind of small good work that keeps your own ribs from rattling. He set the stack down. There are 7 more, he said. I started getting them after a client survey went out. They mentioned your name often, not your title, not your roll code. Your name? He met my eyes then. I realized I was measuring the wrong thing when I picked up my pencil. Something in me unclenched, not relief exactly, but the opposite of bracing. I hadn't even noticed how long I'd been bracing. I should have told you sooner, he said. I should have told you I wrote your name and then crossed it out hard enough to leave an imprint on the next page. I'm telling you now because the company will make announcements next week, and when they do, I don't want any shadow to reach you with my fingerprints on it. I'd always believed that the hardest kind of honesty is the kind that doesn't require a confession, the kind no one would know about if you kept it quiet. He didn't have to tell me. He chose to. He gave me back the power to know what room I was standing in. Thank you, I said, and I meant it in 4 different ways. For being honest, for seeing me, for changing his mind, for asking permission to tell me a thing that could have stayed buried under the carpet we vacuum twice a week. He nodded, almost relieved by the words. There's more, he said. May I keep going? Yes, I said. Please. He took a breath that looked like it had been practicing. I'm stepping back for a while, he said. Not resigning, just creating room. My wife's doctor wants to try a new treatment. We're hopeful, but it will mean more time at appointments, less time here. I used to think being a good boss meant never letting my personal life touch this place. I'm starting to think the opposite. That the best version of leadership is honest and human. The humming vent finally exhaled. I'm sorry, I said, because there are times when sorry means I'm with you in this, not I caused this. How can I help? By letting me ask you for something, he said. I want you to lead the transition on the operations floor for the next quarter. You already do the work of 10 job descriptions. I need you to do it with a title that matches. And I need to know you're comfortable with that. If it's too much, say so. I'll find another path. In another life, younger me would have shrink-wrapped that offer in fear, the optics, the gossip, the sudden weight of it. But something about the way he asked, the quiet consent, the steady eye contact, the folder open like a palm, made the answer live in a simpler place. I can do it, I said. But let's do it right. Boundaries clear as the labels on these folders. I'll need authority that isn't a rumor, and I'll need time to train Ruth on intake. And you and I, we're going to have standing check-ins so neither of us is trying to read smoke signals. A small smile moved across his face. That's exactly what I hoped you'd say. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The city found its voice below. Horn, siren, a laugh that made it all the way up to us. Somewhere on the 14th floor, a phone rang until it didn't. Light pushed deeper into the room, laying a bright bar across the binding of my planner as if to underline the day. "There's one more thing," he said, and he slid an envelope across the desk. My name was on it in his handwriting. Not the neat printed kind, but the slanted Saturday kind, the way you write when you're thinking more than you're performing. "Open it whenever you want," he said. "Or never. It's a 2-page letter I've been writing for weeks. It explains the evaluation process, the budget mess, and my apology without the clumsy pauses I put in when I'm talking. It isn't for HR. It's for you." The envelope was warm from his hand. I didn't open it. Not yet. I wanted the moment to be what it already was. 2 people at a desk telling the truth and figuring out how to carry it without dropping it. "Is it okay if I ask something personal?" I said. "Of course," he replied, and I noticed he used my word. Of course, as if language could meet you halfway. "What made you change your mind that day? Was it the cards?" He looked at the folder again, thoughtful. "It was you, actually. I came in early. You were at your desk with your coat still on, talking on speaker with it for a manager in another department whose password had locked after a family emergency. You stayed on for 30 minutes until he got back in, and you never made it anyone's problem. I stood there in the hall and realized I was going to cut the person who made this place kinder without being asked to. I don't want to be that man. I've been that man before. I don't like him." I laughed softly, because sometimes the only way to carry something is to give it a lighter handle. "Good," I said. "That's both like who we are at work." We stood there with that simple promise hovering like a paper airplane that might actually fly. Then he did something that would have felt strange in any other context. He asked me a question that made room for an answer. "Would a handshake be okay?" he asked. "I'd like to mark this, but I want to be respectful." That sentence, "would it be okay?" did more for my sense of safety than any policy memo I've ever filed. I stood, came around the desk so the furniture stopped pretending it had something to say about our roles, and held out my hand. His palm was steady, neither too firm nor apologetically soft, honest right down to the grip. We didn't hold for long, just long enough to agree to carry this together. When I let go, I felt different than I had 5 minutes earlier. Taller in some way that had nothing to do with posture. Seen in a way that didn't demand I be smaller to fit. He stepped back, and for the first time I noticed his tie was a little off-center. "You have a coffee meeting in 8 minutes," I said without thinking, because my brain inventories calendars the way other people inventory spices. "Do you want me to push it 10? He smiled. "Let's keep it. Normal is helpful." "Normal with honesty," I said. "We can live there." He nodded and turned toward the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. "Thank you for hearing me," he said. "And for staying." "Thank you for telling me," I answered. "And for asking." After he left, the room shifted back into regular office sounds, but they felt less like noise and more like a heartbeat you could sync to. Keys typing. Chair rolling. Someone's soft laughter down the corridor. I sat and opened my planner to a fresh page. I drew a line straight down the middle. Left, tasks. Right, promises. Under tasks I wrote, draft transition plan. Meet with Ruth. Check budget line 704. Under promises I wrote, lead kindly. Ask first. Answer honestly. The envelope waited. I didn't open it yet because sometimes the anticipation of truth is its own tender courage. I slid it into the top drawer with the paper clips and a photo of my sister and me on a summer Ferris wheel, sun in our eyes. I felt the weight of it settle in the dark like something patient. My phone buzzed. A message from Ruth. Do you have a second to look at the vendor portal? It's being moody. I smiled. The world keeps being itself, even when yours tilts a little. On my way to her desk, I passed Joseph's office. He was on the phone, a soft expression on his face I hadn't seen before. Unguarded, not because he was careless, but because he finally decided he didn't have to armor through every minute. He glanced up and gave a small nod that meant later, we'll talk. A language you learn after years of working together and only start to speak fluently when someone decides to put down the script. I thought about the men and women who taught me how to survive in offices. My first boss who said never cry in a restroom. Cry in the archive room. It's quieter. The senior VP who gave me my first real project and then admitted she was terrified every day of her first year. The janitor who once lent me his pocket radio during a thunderstorm because the static made him feel less alone. We survive on each other more than we admit. At Ruth's cubicle, we wrestled the vendor portal into obedience like it was a misbehaving puppy. She's 27 and brilliant in the sideways way genius hides, her desk a cheerful disaster of sticky notes and highlighters. Thanks, Jessica, she said, once the login behaved. You always make the hard things feel smaller. It's just practice, I said. You'll do the same for someone else soon. When I walked back to my desk, I realized I was moving differently. Shoulders not pulled up to my ears, steps landing with a little less apology. I sat, reopened the spreadsheet I'd minimized earlier, and found myself smiling at row after row of numbers. There's a kind of joy in order, the soft click of understanding, but it feels better when it doesn't come at the cost of someone's humanity. Around noon, the sunlight shifted across the office floor in a slow-moving plaid, bright squares sliding over carpet and shoes, and the chrome legs of chairs. I pulled my lunch from the bottom drawer, leftover chicken salad in a container that had survived more than a few microwaves, and I opened the envelope. The letter was what he promised. A clear timeline of meetings, the names of people in rooms, the moment he wrote my role on a list, the moment he erased it, and the why behind both. It didn't make excuses. It didn't sigh theatrically. It spoke like a person speaking to a person. He ended with a line I read twice, then 3 times. I want to work in a place where we can say the true thing the first time, and where the person across from us is a whole human being, not just a number in a column. Thank you for being the reminder. I folded the pages and placed them back inside. I didn't cry, though I could have, and no one would have blamed me. Instead, I felt that steadying kind of relief you get when your car's wheels find the dry pavement after a slick patch. Grip, direction, a road you know how to drive again. That afternoon, I drafted the transition plan. I listed tasks, owners, deadlines, and the small rituals that keep an office from turning into just a stack of tasks. Birthday cupcakes in the break room, Friday check-ins that actually end at 5, the communal plant we all forget to water and then feel guilty about. When the page was full, I looked up to find Joseph standing at the door again, this time with a cup of fresh coffee and a look that said he was practicing normal. Peace offering, he said, placing the cup on my desk. I accept, I said, on one condition. He raised an eyebrow. That you take care of yourself with the same attention you've been giving these spreadsheets. Doctor's orders aren't suggestions. He smiled, a real one that reached the small lines at the corners of his eyes. Deal, he said. When he left, I glanced at the comments you were leaving in my mind. Chicago, Tampa, Sacramento, some little town in West Virginia with a name that sounds like a lullaby. I thought of you listening to this in a living room after dinner, or in a workshop with sawdust in the air, or in a recliner with the dog snoring and the news low. Maybe you've sat at a desk like mine. Maybe you've been Joseph or Jessica or Ruth. Maybe you've been the person who crossed something out on a list and then spent weeks learning how to be someone who doesn't make that kind of list anymore. By 5:30, the office had softened into evening. Screens dimmed, voices lowered, the city's lights insisting on themselves. I shut down my computer, tucked the letter into my bag, and took one last look at the desk where the day had happened. The mug with the crack, the binder tabs, the pen with the good ink. The air felt different, like a room after someone opens a window. On the elevator ride down, Joseph stepped in at the 8th floor. We faced forward, the way people do when they're learning a new shape for something that used to be easier to name. Before the doors opened, he said, "Same time tomorrow?" "Same time," I said. "We've got a lot to build." The doors parted, and we walked out into a corridor that smelled faintly of lemon and possibility. I don't know what you'll call what happened at my desk that morning, promotion, confession, a course correction, but I know what it felt like. Two people choosing honesty on purpose. That choice doesn't make the work lighter. It makes it worth lifting. And that's how an ordinary desk became a place where the truth sat down, asked permission, and stayed. The next morning came with the usual shuffle of papers and the smell of too strong coffee, but it didn't feel like just another morning. Something had shifted between Joseph and me the day before, something that made even the ordinary hum of the office sound like it carried a deeper note. The letter he'd left me was still tucked safely in my bag, folded carefully as though its edges could fray if I wasn't gentle enough. I'd read it twice before bed, the words running through my head long after the lights went out, and I woke up with the sense that today was going to be about carrying that honesty into the light. Joseph wasn't in his office when I arrived. His door was ajar, a jacket hanging neatly on the back of his chair, a half-drunk cup of tea cooling on the coaster. It told me enough. He was here, but giving himself permission to step away. I set my things down and turned my attention to the transition plan. The tasks, the notes, the boundaries we had talked about, they weren't just words in my notebook anymore. They had to live in action, in conversations, in the way we worked. Around 9, Ruth appeared at my desk with her usual whirlwind energy, her bangs a little crooked from the rain outside. "Morning, Jessica. Do you have 5 minutes? Or 10? Vendor portal again." She said it like she knew I'd already guessed. I smiled. "Let's sit down together. I want you to start taking the lead on this. I'll walk you through it." As we worked through the login errors and the mismatched invoice numbers, I found myself explaining more than fixing, guiding instead of grabbing the keyboard. Her shoulders relaxed the longer we talked. At one point, she said, "I feel like you're preparing me for something bigger," and I realized she wasn't wrong. This was what leadership looked like when it was honest. You don't just do the work. You share the map so someone else can find their way too. By noon, Joseph returned. He stopped by my desk, no folder in hand this time, just a look that was both tired and lighter. "Jessica, can we walk for a bit?" he asked. We stepped outside, the city air brisk against our faces. The streets buzzed with midday life, food carts steaming, horns breaking the rhythm of footsteps, the occasional laugh rising above it all. We walked side by side, the way two colleagues do when they're balancing the line between professional and personal. "I wanted to thank you again," Joseph said, his voice quieter now, as if honesty needed a softer delivery outside the walls of the office. "Not just for listening yesterday, but for agreeing to step in. My wife's appointment is tomorrow. It's important, and knowing you're steady here makes it easier to breathe." I nodded, letting his words sink into the space between us. "I don't take this lightly, Joseph. I'll hold the line, But you need to promise me something, too. Promise me you'll actually step back. Don't check your email from the waiting room. Don't call in between appointments. Be where you need to be." He gave a small laugh, but it was the kind that comes when someone feels seen in a way they didn't expect. "You've always been better at protecting me from myself than I have." We paused at a crosswalk. The light changed. Cars idled, then moved, then silence again as the signal gave us our turn. For a moment, we just stood there, neither of us rushing, as if we both understood that honesty wasn't meant to be sprinted through. Back at the office, I gathered the team for an impromptu check-in. I told them about the transition plan. Not everything, not the personal details Joseph had entrusted me with, but enough for them to know what was happening. I framed it not as a crisis, but as a shared responsibility. "We're in this together," I said, watching their faces shift from uncertainty to something steadier. People work harder when they know the truth has been put on the table, even in pieces. Later in the afternoon, Joseph and I sat down for our first standing check-in. His desk was scattered with small reminders of his life, photos of his kids at the beach, a newspaper folded open to the crossword, the tea mug now rinsed and drying. He leaned back, listening as I walked him through the transition notes. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was reporting to him. I felt like we were planning side by side. "Jessica," he said as we wrapped up, "I know this isn't the path you planned for, but I can already see you are more than ready for it." I looked at him, really looked at him, at the lines on his forehead carved by years of keeping too much inside, at the steadiness in his eyes when he finally let himself tell the truth. "You know," I said, "yesterday I thought I'd leave here with nothing but a folded letter in my bag. Instead, I think I'm walking into a season where honesty might actually become part of the job description." He smiled then, and it was a smile that held both gratitude and relief. "Let's make it that way," he said. As the day drew to a close, the office dimmed into that quiet lull, where screens flicker off one by one and chairs roll back into place. I packed up my things slowly, not rushing the moment. Joseph was still at his desk, finishing a note, the kind of man who was learning how to put words where silence used to live. When I left, I felt the cool air of evening on my face and realized something important. Sometimes the most surprising honesty doesn't come in grand confessions or dramatic revelations. Sometimes it's in the small permission to be human, at a desk, in a letter, during a walk outside with the city buzzing around you. And as I walked to my car, I thought of you again, listening from your living rooms, your shops, your porches. Maybe you've had a Joseph in your life, or maybe you've been one. Maybe you've had to learn how to carry honesty without dropping it, how to share it without letting it bruise. That's what happened at the office desk that day. My boss's honesty took me by surprise, yes. But more than that, it gave me a reason to believe that the workplace, as ordinary as it looks, can be a place where truth is allowed to sit down and stay a while.